It put me in tears so many times.
Alexis Pearsall is a 16-year-old student whose mother sees a side Metro school officials don't see.
They're not the ones that sat and watched her be depressed and sat in her room and not go anywhere and not talk to anyone because she was terrified that her grades weren't going to be good enough.
A student at Nashville's Hunters Lane High School, Alexis was enrolled last year in freshman biology. Biology is one of those critical subjects that has an end-of-course exam that's also used to judge how well the school is performing.
I was doing fine.
But when Alexis returned to school after the winter break last year, she was told that she had failed the first semester and was being put into what's called credit recovery to study biology on a computer on her own.
I was wondering why I got put in there when I passed it. I shouldn't have been put in there.
So you had passed the first semester and you were told to redo it on the computer?
Yes.
In the case of Alexis Pearsall, Nashville school officials blame the mistake on a, quote, clerical error.
Still, the State Department of Education opened its own investigation of the district's testing practices.
And members of the two education committees for the State House held a rare day-long hearing on the issues raised by our investigation.
But let me address the major issue at hand on the front end. During our internal review, we have not found instances of gamemanship.
District leaders continue to downplay the problem, leading to some emotional testimony from the whistleblowers themselves. Phil Williams was there.
We have someone at Hunters Lane that had a 93, an A. They needed remediation.
Lawmakers heard from Metro Schools employees Kelly Brown.
Well, we have been told that we are disgruntled.
And Shauna West.
Yes, I'm disgruntled. I'm very disgruntled with not only the fact that we are setting our kids up for failure. Why would anybody do that to a child?
And a new whistleblower.
They've been not allowing kids to test for quite a few years at my school.
Sherry Trumbo testified that at Stratford High School, administrators would pull the lowest performing students and not let them take the exams.
They would cherry pick which students weren't going to take it. And I had where the students were actually present that day to take the test and they were not allowed to do it.
That hearing also pulled back the curtain on another suspicious practice that our team had been investigating.
A practice that we discovered was designed to keep immigrant students from pulling down the district's test scores. Phil Williams continues his investigation.
There's been some issues raised about end of course.
Lawmakers held a day-long hearing amid allegations of some Metro high schools pulling struggling students from classes with end-of-course exams, allegedly so those student scores would not be counted in scores used to judge the schools.
But we are doing what is right for the students of Nashville.
Perhaps the strongest defense of the school system came from Dr. Amy Wyatt, Metro's executive officer for high schools.
During our internal review, we have not found instances of gamemanship. Instead, we have found teachers and principals making intervention decisions for students based on their individual best interests.
A long day of testimony ended.
This happened in 2010 at Antioch High School.
With retired teacher John Condit, who testified that at Antioch High School he witnessed the exact same practices 5 years ago. In those cases, he said, immigrant students were pulled from English 2, which counted against the scores for the school, and put into English 4, which did not count.
I was told it came from the administration.
While Condit did not name the Antioch principal at the time, NewsChannel 5 Investigates discovered it was Amy Wyatt, the same person who now oversees all Metro high schools. Condit said he confronted the principal.
I said, why would these kids be put in English 4 when they're still in English 2? I was told because the test scores, the perception that people see on our test scores, the school looks good and it's the best for the child because a child won't feel like they've lost by failing this class.
In fact, NewsChannel 5 Investigates obtained this complaint that Condit filed with the state, alleging that ELL students, those are English language learners, were targeted because they were projected not to pass the end-of-course exam.
Are any students being pulled out of end-of-course exam courses any time during the second semester before the end-of-course exam is administered?
So I'm going to take council's advice and not answer your question again. But
Dr. Wyatt refused to answer specific questions from lawmakers, citing a pending lawsuit. She also declined our request for an interview. After Condit filed his complaint, state officials notified Metro and opened an investigation. That investigation did not find any wrongdoing. Condit says he was later told that someone had gone into the computer system and reassigned the students to their proper classes, although he cannot prove it one way or another.
And we didn't have a choice. I mean, we had to move these. Primarily, at least in my schools, they were the English language learners.
But these Metro schools whistleblowers told us such computer games were common with immigrant students a few years back, when all 11th graders were supposed to take writing assessments that were used to evaluate the performance of the schools.
There were times where some students' grade levels were changed from 11 to 10.
They would be demoted in the computer system?
Right.
Yes.
In February.
Yeah.
Why?
So they wouldn't affect, the scores wouldn't be affected.
We don't want the state, I guess, to wonder why we didn't test a whole bunch of students. So now we're just going to move them to the 10th grade.
In the computer system?
In the computer system.
In the computer system, they get demoted to the 10th grade.
This piece of the contract.
District officials say that occurred after former Chief Academic Officer Jay Still developed a new progression plan for high school students in 2009-2010. That plan changed the way credits for English language classes were used to determine grade levels. As a result, 190 students were reclassified that year from 11th grade back to 10th grade. More than 2/3 of those were immigrant students.
So these are 11th graders who get demoted to 10th grade in the computer system, and then the next year?
They're seniors.
They're seniors.
Provided they passed all their stuff, yeah.
Well, what sense does that make?
You want me to say that out loud?
Well, it's all a part of the same, scenario to keep them, looking like they're making a lot of gains.